Welcome PSY 310 students. This is my week 3 commentary as we are now past our getting started workshop, and this is the last week in which we are really focusing on foundations and getting off to a good start in the course. Please check out this week's expectations carefully as a test will soon be coming up and due. And the content of this week is all about the distinction between assessment and personality research and personality testing. And so I just want to comment on that briefly, and then I want to comment on effect size and the importance of knowing something about the significance of numbers in statistics as we look at test results. First of all, on the distinction between personality research, personality testing, and personality assessment. This chapter begins to introduce the students to what I consider to be the craft of personality assessment. Personality assessment is certainly not testing, and looking at the image on this week's front page of our website, you'll see one of the early forms of personality study, which is to say psychoanalysis, and the couch used by Sigmund Freud himself. That being said, assessment in the clinical sense sometimes takes a very long time to accomplish, and formal personality assessment and the more contemporary emphasis upon time-limited evaluation and assessment work really changed the nature of personality studies, both in the clinic and in professional practice, which is to say in clinical offices or even in human resource offices and military personnel selection offices. So the times have changed, and so the distinctions between what really evaluating a personality is about and quick and dirty personality testing on lines is immensely large. There's a big gap between those two. So as you're looking at this week, personality assessment, first notice that's not the same as personality research, which is what Funder will be emphasizing throughout this semester, because the goals are different, and the purposes are different, and the intended audiences are different. So personality research is looking for that knowledge which is generalizable across settings and is useful for a variety of purposes and audiences that go well beyond the clinical participants. By contrast, personality assessment traditionally is in the domain of clinical psychologists, but more currently practices used in personnel offices and in management consulting situations, even in a relatively new business called coaching. And if you look at coaching online, you'll see that it has been around now for more than a decade, and it also takes a distinctive approach to the study of personality. So, in summary, the distinction between personality research, personality assessment, and personality testing is important if one is to make sense of the results and reports and information that one sees online and in clinical offices or other psychological offices. Okay, so enough on that. The other is the issue of effect sizes, and this week's chapter goes into the fact that simply identifying differences is often misleading, which is to say there's a classic cliche that distinctions are not the same as differences, and some differences are not meaningful distinctions. So really what it comes down to is not identifying variations, but rather knowing something about variations and the size of the differences. In other words, when do differences matter? And that's where this concept of effect size in this week's reading is quite important, because it's not hard to do any kind of study and find differences, but whether or not they're meaningful or valid or generalizable is the kind of thinking that well-educated psych students and practitioners really need to be on top of. So those are two important themes. The third for this week, of course, is the issue of ethics. And ethics go well beyond privacy, go well beyond deception. And you'll see Funder, and I give him credit for this, reminds us that doing personality studies, either clinically or academically or in human resource offices, brings with it ethical responsibilities and the possibility of people being harmed, which is really the takeaway point in our appreciation of ethics. I suppose the overriding ethic being do no harm, but that is an ideal. So we have much to discuss this week, and I'll look forward to your contributions on the discussion board. We're off to a good start. We had great discussions at the first workshop, so I am cautiously optimistic. I will be departing later this week for my new office in the Czech Republic, and I will be online throughout the journey, and hopefully within 2 weeks we'll be established into a new kind of working relationship, and I'll appreciate your working with me as we build that bridge. So have a good week, and thanks for your contributions so far.